I'm a 30-year-old single office worker who never had a girlfriend. My only saving grace is my programming skills. Since childhood, I've been an introvert and have difficulty socializing, a trait that's followed me into adulthood. I find it hard to initiate conversations, so my circle of friends consists only of a few from my school days. Not only do I struggle with building new relationships, but I also get nervous and can't respond well when approached, so people at work have gradually stopped talking to me. Over time, I started being labeled as a loner. I'm never invited to lunch or drinking parties, which is lonely, but I also get tired when I am invited, so I guess it's not so bad. Especially, Miss Johnson, the beautiful receptionist, was blatantly looking down on me. Whenever I passed the reception desk, she would always glare at me and I could hear her whispering bad things about me to her colleagues. Even when I thought back, there was no interaction with her to begin with, so I had no clue why she behaved like this. Then one day, a junior colleague from my department was getting married and I had almost no choice but to attend the wedding. I didn't really talk to him much and was wondering why I needed to attend, but I didn't want to offend him, so I reluctantly agreed to go. I wondered if they would really be happy to have someone like me there. With a heavy heart, I left my house. On my way to the wedding venue, unfortunately, I found an old man collapsed on the ground in a park. If it wasn't a crowded place, I would think someone else will help, but there was no one else around. I couldn't just ignore him, so I ran to the old man and called an ambulance. "Are you okay?" "I've called an ambulance," I said, and although he was struggling to breathe, he said, "Thank you." And that put me at ease. The ambulance arrived and after explaining the situation to the paramedics, I was about to leave, but I was worried about the old man who was alone, so I decided to accompany him to the hospital. When the examination was over at the hospital, I was relieved to find out that the old man's life was not in danger, but of course, I was definitely going to be late for the wedding. When I finally arrived at the wedding, unfortunately, it was a quiet moment, and I received cold looks from my colleagues. Even when we moved to the reception venue, I was feeling awkward the whole time since I had no one to talk to. I had anticipated this, but I couldn't help feeling upset thinking why I had to go through all this even after giving the wedding gift money. As the empty beer bottles began to pile up, some of my colleagues who were red in the face started to put me down on purpose. Especially when the topic of girlfriends or families came up, they'd say things like some guys treat their computers like girlfriends, or maybe he has a virtual girlfriend inside his computer, or man, that's weird, all while glancing my way. Of course, not everyone was saying things like this, but since no one was defending me, it felt like everyone was against me. That day, I went home feeling sad, thinking that I shouldn't have attended the wedding. Several days passed since the wedding incident. After the usual crowded train ride, I walked to the office, dragging my feet through the automatic doors. Normally, I would wait for the elevator while being scared of Miss Johnson, who usually glared at me from the reception, but today was different. For some reason, Miss Johnson hurriedly got up from her seat and ran towards me. I braced myself, thinking she might have a major complaint, but to my surprise, Miss Johnson said, "I'm sorry for the way I've acted. I unfairly disliked you and acted rudely towards you." Miss Johnson, who I had always found intimidating and unapproachable, was speaking to me with a completely different demeanor. Unable to understand the situation, I was dumbfounded. I had never had a chance to look at her face up close before, but seeing Miss Johnson up close, I realized why she was considered out of our league by the male staff, because she was really beautiful. However, I noticed that I was being stared at by people coming into the office because I was facing Miss Johnson, so I tried to leave immediately. But Miss Johnson, who seemed not to care about the stares, invited me to the space next to the reception and began to explain the situation. Apparently, Miss Johnson had once been a victim of an online stalker. Because of that, she had a dislike for me, who was a member of the system development department and somewhat resembled that perpetrator. Even though she knew I was a different person, she couldn't help but feel scared. Also, I had completely forgotten until now, but when I first joined the company, I inadvertently stared at Miss Johnson, who was exceptionally beautiful and stood out. There was no ulterior motive, but I couldn't help but follow beautiful women with my eyes. I hadn't realized that such an innocent act on my part could make someone else feel so uncomfortable. As I was reflecting and apologizing to Miss Johnson, something happened. The company president was walking up behind Miss Johnson, and, for some reason, he was with the old man I had helped the other day. What's more, Miss Johnson, who was standing next to me, stopped the old man and said, "This is Mr. Harper." Stunned and confused, the old man turned to me and said, "I'm grateful for your help the other day. I'm feeling much better, thanks to you. Thank you very much." He bowed his head and then headed to the president's office. Just like with the incident with Miss Johnson earlier, I was left dumbfounded. Then, Miss Johnson told me, "He's my grandfather." It turned out that the old man I had helped was the president of an important client company for us, and Miss Johnson was his granddaughter. According to Miss Johnson, after asking for my contact information in the hospital, the old man learned that I was an employee of the company his granddaughter worked for and seemed to have inquired about me. She initially described me as someone I haven't spoken to much, but he is aloof, interested only in himself and computers, and probably a creepy stalker type. At that, the old man frowned and started telling the story of how I had helped him. He then scolded her for holding biased prejudices, saying, "You shouldn't judge people by their appearance alone. After all, he helped me and even accompanied me to the hospital." Miss Johnson said she deeply reflected upon hearing the old man's words. So that's why she apologized to me with such intensity earlier. I thought it was an odd coincidence, but I was glad that Miss Johnson's misunderstanding had been cleared up. A week later, I came to work as usual, sat at my desk with a cup of coffee, opened the attendance screen, and pressed the button. I always check the company-wide notifications, and as I was going through today's notices as usual, I thought I saw my own name. I felt strange and read it again. For some reason, my name was listed as a member of a new project. I knew they had been recruiting project members internally before, but I hadn't applied and I had heard the competition was fierce, so it should have had nothing to do with me. I sat at my desk, not understanding if it was some kind of mistake. Then the people around me started whispering and glancing at me. I was fed up with being treated this way again, just because of a mistake. Then, the department head appeared on the floor and started the usual morning meeting.
Good morning. Let's start the morning meeting. The major announcement for today is about the new project, I guess. I assume everyone has checked the shared file, but let's just confirm it again for confirmation.
The morning meetings with the department head were always excruciating. I expected that I would be laughed at when they announced there had been a mistake in the list of members. I didn't want to face anyone, so I just kept looking down. But for some reason, when they announced each member's name, mine was called as a matter of course. As expected, the room buzzed when my name was called. After all, in our department, I was the only new member announced, and the two people who were expected to be chosen were not included. The engineers were me and two from another department, totaling three. Then, someone asked, "Is Mr. Harper in?" The department head said, "Yes," as I read out earlier, "he is in." The president told me to definitely include Mr. Harper in the members. "Mr. Harper, do your best." I wondered why the president would, but there was no way to find out. As I was thinking about how many strange things had been happening recently, Miss Johnson approached me as I arrived at the entrance.
Can I talk to you for a bit?
"Oh, sure."
About the new project members announced today.
According to what Miss Johnson shared with me, the old man I helped had remembered someone in our company saying, "Harper is diligent and his system development ability is flawless, but he's too introverted and annoying." Po Harper, that's a pity. He had been curious because Harper was an unusual surname and he thought it might be about me. That's why he had asked Miss Johnson in detail about my job level and evaluation within the company. Miss Johnson had said that I was very knowledgeable and excellent in programming in the system development department, but not very good at socializing and wasn't properly evaluated. I was surprised that Miss Johnson knew so much about me, even though she was a receptionist, not HR staff. When I wondered why she knew so much about me, Miss Johnson continued, "I have a friend who works in human resources. They told me." When she told the old man about it, he said, "It's too bad he's not appreciated even though he's excellent. Communication skills are necessary for sales, but engineers should be properly evaluated in their specialized fields. We should find a way to let Mr. Harper demonstrate his abilities. Maybe we should propose to include him in the next project." I was always labeled as a loner by everyone, always drawing the short straw and thinking that I would continue to live a dark and solitary life. But then, out of the blue, a chance presented itself. Feeling a surge of determination not to waste her grandfather's goodwill, I am fully committed to ensuring the success of the project. In the past, I would have been worried about not making a mistake or causing any trouble. However, now I feel a stronger motivation that I can't let down the trust and expectations placed in me by her grandfather. And it wasn't just being chosen for the new project team. It seems that Miss Johnson spread the word about my helping her grandfather, and soon my story was making rounds in the company. Before, I wouldn't even get invited to social gatherings, but now I'm increasingly being asked, "How about joining us for a drink, Mr. Harper?" I was socially awkward, but the simple fact that I was being invited made me happy, and I started showing up at these social gatherings from time to time. Before joining the new project, I was deeply concerned about my lack of social skills, but once I started, the job was so rewarding that I didn't worry about such things, and I became happier and more fulfilled each day. I feel like I am meeting the expectations of everyone, including the CEO, by showcasing my excellent programming skills, which I was always good at. And there is not a single person among these members who would mock me or try to ostracize me. Everyone is passionately focused on their jobs, all for the success of the project. It seems that her grandfather, who knew about my trouble with conversation despite being competent at work, advised the CEO on how to make the most of his employees. In this project team, embracing individual personalities has also become one of the themes. Thanks to the project, I am now recognized as one of the top engineers in the company, and no one looks down on me anymore. Moreover, I can even have friendly conversations with Miss Johnson now. My entire life has changed in an unbelievable way because I helped an old man. I plan to continue working hard so that I can be of use to everyone, and if possible, I hope to grow even closer to Miss Johnson,